Hello everyone, welcome back to Sportstagator. On this video, I am going to predict the 2020 MLB standings and record predictions. So let's get this video started. Please don't forget to subscribe. The New York Yankees, 102-60. The New York Yankees almost made it to the World Series last year, but unfortunately they lost to the Houston Astros in the ALCS. In the 2010s decade for the New York Yankees, they did make one World Series appearance. In the 2000s decade, they did make the World Series 4 times and winning 2 out of 4 appearances. The last time they did make the World Series was back in 2009 against the Philadelphia Phillies, and they won that in 6 games. They have currently made the playoffs for 3 seasons in a row and getting to the ALCS twice in that time. I suspect the Yankees are going to have one of the best offenses in baseball, or the very best this season. I think their pitching staff will be elite this season. They will be one of the best teams in the 2020 season and will have a great chance of winning the World Series. So my prediction is that the New York Yankees will win the AL East and will be the best team in the American League. The Tampa Bay Rays, 92-70. The Tampa Bay Rays had a tremendous season last year by ending a 5-year playoff drought in 2019. In the playoffs, they won the AL wildcard game against the Oakland Athletics and advanced to the AL Division Series and unfortunately lost against the Houston Astros. Over the past 2 seasons, they have won 90 games in 2018, and then in 2019 they won 96. Tampa Bay's trio of Blake Snell, Charlie Morton, and Tyler Glasnow is incredible. Blake Snell won the Cy Young Award in 2018. Charlie Morton finished 3rd in this past season, and Tyler Glasnow could have won if he stayed healthy. There's no escaping the durability questions with each of these pitchers, but they're all aces when healthy. So my prediction is that the Tampa Bay Rays will be a great team again, and will be a wildcard team this season. The Boston Red Sox, 85-77. The Boston Red Sox had a disappointing season in 2019, when they only won 84 games. Compared to the 2018 season when they won the World Series. Last season was the first time since 2015 that the Red Sox have missed the playoffs. In 2019, their offense was even better, scoring 901 runs compared to the 2018 season when they only scored 876 runs. The reason why the Boston Red Sox weren't as good last season was because of their pitching staff giving up 828 runs compared to the previous season when they gave up 647 runs. A new era in Boston is about to begin. When they traded 2018 AL MVP Mookie Betts and 2012 AL Cy Young Award winner David Price to Los Angeles Dodgers for outfielder Alex Verdugo and a pair of minor league prospects. There will also be a new head coach for the Boston Red Sox in the dugout this season, as the team and manager Alex Cora mutually parted ways in mid-January after he was linked to a pair of sign-stealing scandals. Alice has already been named as a key participant in the Astros scheme when he was the bench coach during the 2017 World Series run. The Boston Red Sox have named former bench coach Ron Runick as interim manager for the 2020 season. Even without Mookie Betts and David Price no longer on the team, their roster is still very talented, but their overall strength of this team will be on the offensive side. The top of the Boston Red Sox order is still one of the strongest in baseball even as they sit in peril. Their Achilles heel is their pitching staff, which was a major issue for them last season, will once again come back to haunt them this year. They still do have the talent in place to make a run at the Yankees. I just don't see that happening this season, maybe in the next couple of seasons. So my prediction is that the Boston Red Sox will be a competitive team this season and could be a wildcard team this year. The Toronto Blue Jays, 77-85. The Toronto Blue Jays had a really tough rebuilding season in 2019, going 67-95. The Blue Jays finished last season 21st in team ERA at 4.79. The big reason for that was Toronto trading their top 2 starting pitchers, Marcus Stroman and Aaron Sanchez, last summer. Trent Thornton's the only returning starter that has a chance of cracking the rotation as he'll fight for the 5th and final spot. They enter the 2020 season as a team clearly on the rise. The only question is how quickly they'll get where they're going. Around the young core of talent, the Blue Jays have added much needed pitching depth to balance the roster. Toronto has a much different look with Hyun Jin Ryu as the ace of the rotation that includes Matt Shoemaker, Tanner Roark, and Chase Anderson. The middle of that rotation should eat up some valuable innings, saving the team from what they went through in 2019. I absolutely think that the Toronto Blue Jays will be on the rise this year and will be a fun young team to watch this season. The Baltimore Orioles, 58 and 104. The Baltimore Orioles finished with the second worst record in baseball last season, winning only 54 games in 2019. They are coming off consecutive 100 lost seasons, and last season was the third worst season in franchise history. If Chris Davis can have a bounce-back season this year, that would help the Baltimore Orioles a lot this year. I think the Baltimore Orioles will be an improved team just a little bit this season, but they still will be a 100-loss team again for the third consecutive season in a row, and will finish last place in the AL East in the 2020 season. So that's my AL East standing predictions for the 2020 season. Here you go. The Minnesota Twins, 93 and 69. The Minnesota Twins had a fantastic season last year by winning 101 games and taking home their first division title since 2010. In the playoffs, they faced the New York Yankees in the AL Division Series and got swept. That pushed the Minnesota Twins' playoff losing streak to 16 games and making it 15 years without a playoff win. The Minnesota Twins set the all-time record for home runs in a season at 307. One of the newest members of the Minnesota Twins is third baseman Josh Donaldson, who the Twins signed to a 4-year, $92 million deal on January 22nd. They even made a trade to require starting pitcher Kenta Maeda from the Dodgers. The Twins have one of the best lineups in MLB and also have one of the best bullpens in the league too. I suspect the Minnesota Twins will win their division again and will have a deep playoff run this season. The Cleveland Indians, 87 and 75. The Cleveland Indians failed to make the playoffs in 2019, not because of poor playing, and that was the first time that they have missed the playoffs since 2015. The Cleveland Indians won 93 games and outscored opponents by 112 runs, which would have been enough to qualify for the postseason in many seasons. However, a stacked top of the American League kept Cleveland out of the playoffs. 3 American League teams won at least 100 games: the New York Yankees, the Houston Astros, and the AL Central winner Minnesota Twins. And the wildcard game was composed of 96-win Tampa Bay Rays and the 97-win Oakland Athletics. Their time as the top dog in the AL Central may be over. They did have a 3-year run as AL Central Division champions. The Cleveland Indians will still be a competitive team in 2020 because of their strong starting rotation. That was even tested with the trades of Trevor Bauer and the 2-time Cy Young Award winner Corey Kluber. Shane Bieber, Mike Clevenger, and Carlos Carrasco provided a good base in the rotation, but the bullpen, which pitched well last season, was hurt by free agent defections in the offseason. The offense, which slipped from third best to tie the 7th in runs in the American League last season. That is expected to be a sore spot because there has been no major additions with the exception of having power hitter Reyes for a full season. The Cleveland Indians have posted 7 straight winning seasons since manager Terry Francona took over the club in 2013. That streak could be in danger for the 2020 season. So my prediction is that I think the Cleveland Indians will be a good competitive team this season and will be a contender for the 2020 season. The Chicago White Sox, 82 and 80. The Chicago White Sox had a 10-game improvement in 2019 with a 72 and 89 record, sitting in third place in the American League Central and finishing with a massive 28.5 games behind the division winners, the Minnesota Twins. Chicago's run difference was poor, being outscored by opponents by 124 runs, 7th worst among all MLB teams. They have had 7 straight losing seasons, and what matters on the south side is the ability to finally move on the right side of 500. Their last postseason appearance came in 2008. The Chicago White Sox have made moves to improve a lineup that features AL batting champion Tim Anderson and RBI leader Jose Abreu. Yasmani Grandal will lift the sagging on-base percentage. Nomar Mazara will be an upgrade in right field, and Edward Carnacion will ensure that the Sox no longer have the AL's least productive DH. The White Sox general manager added 2 starting pitchers in the offseason, and one of them was 2015 Cy Young Award winner Dallas Keuchel, and the other one was another lefty, Gio Gonzalez. The Chicago White Sox are armed with a ton of young talent and multiple significant veteran additions. And my prediction is that the Chicago White Sox will have an extremely bright future and could push for a playoff contention in the 2020 season. The Kansas City Royals, 65-97. The Kansas City Royals are coming off a poor 2019 season, winning just 59 games, while being outscored by 178 runs. Both were the fourth worst marks in MLB. Kansas City had a pitching staff that had the fourth worst ERA in baseball last season at an ERA of 5.20. Last year they were ranked in the bottom half of the AL in defensive efficiency. They did steal 117 bases, second in the American League, but that was not enough to provide much of a boost. They haven't made the playoffs since they won the World Series in 2015 against the New York Mets. It was a difficult winter for the Kansas City Royals fans watching manager Ned Yost retire, then saw David Glass sell the team to Indians minority owner John Sherman for $1 billion. Just 6 weeks after finalizing the sale, Glass died at the age of 84. Though longtime general manager Dayton Moore is still in charge, few ties to the 2015 World Series championship team remain. And the Royals began the 2020s as they did the 2010s, one of the game's worst teams in the league trying to start over. They have lost 104 and 103 games in the last 2 seasons and could hit triple digits again in the 2020 season. I suspect it's going to be another long season for the Kansas City Royals. The Detroit Tigers, 57-105. The Detroit Tigers made history in 2019, joining the Pirates, the original Senators, the Orioles, and the Mets as the only franchises with multiple 110-loss seasons. They also become the first team in the 2000s to lose 110 games twice, after losing 119 times in 2003. They finished the 2019 season with an abysmal 47-114 record, one of the worst in MLB history. To put it lightly, the Tigers were not good at all last season. The Tigers had no players hit more than 15 home runs last season in a year where balls were leaving the park at a historic rate. Unsurprisingly, the Detroit Tigers finished dead last in MLB in runs and 29 home runs. Their GM has brought in short-term upgrades by signing second baseman Jonathan Schoop and first baseman C.J. Cron, who combined for 48 home runs and played good defense in Minnesota last year. That would help inject some much-needed pop into the middle of the Tigers lineup. Some of their top prospects could make their major league debuts this season. I predict that the Detroit Tigers will be one of the worst teams in 2020, but they will be a better team than the 2019 campaign. The bright side of the season would be Miguel Cabrera hitting his 500th home run of his Hall of Fame career. That's my AL Central standing predictions for the 2020 season. Here you go. The Houston Astros, 95-67. The Houston Astros open up the year having been semi-punished for perhaps the most elaborate cheating scandal of baseball history. The player's system of stealing signs off a TV screen and then signaling the upcoming pitch by way of banging on a trash can. Not only got their GM, their manager, and 2 other managers were dismissed, but also cost the franchise $5 million while wrecking its next 2 drafts. Nothing, though, happened to the players. That's because they were offered immunity in exchange for testimony. Commissioner Bob Melford let the sign-stealing system beneficiary go free, leaving a horrible taste in the mouths of fans and opponents, especially pitchers who were hit hard by the Houston Astros. The new head coach of the Houston Astros is Dusty Baker at the age of 70. They do have the talent to go to the World Series again, but the only thing people will be thinking of when watching the Houston Astros is, are they still cheating? I predict that the Houston Astros will still be good in the 2020 season, but turnover in the dugout front office and Garrett Cole's departure could affect their total wins this year. The cheating scandal will hang over the Houston Astros all season, and with every result, good and bad, will be inspected through the lens of sign stealing. How much the Astros will let the public judgment affect them on their past will impact their season and will determine their 2020 campaign. Hopefully there won't be any trash cans nearby. The Oakland Athletics, 94-68. The Oakland Athletics have made the playoffs each of the last 2 seasons, and 5 out of the last 8, but failed to advance each time. In 23 years under Billy Beane, they have just won 1 postseason series, beating the Minnesota Twins in the 2006 ALDS. In fact, they haven't won a deciding playoff contest since Game 7 of the 1973 World Series. They have had the bottom 5 payroll in 7 out of the last 8 seasons, which makes those 5 playoff appearances even more impressive. The Oakland Athletics have a really great offense that is top 10 in the league, and they also have a top 10 bullpen for the upcoming season. The Oakland Athletics are coming off consecutive 97-win seasons and have their key players returning this year. I predict that the Oakland Athletics will be a playoff contender this season and will be a threat to take the AL West division crown from the Houston Astros this year. And if they don't win their division, they will have a fantastic chance to get in the wild card spot.
The Los Angeles Angels, 83-79.
The Los Angeles Angels have missed the playoffs for 5 consecutive seasons in a row, and the last time they did make the playoffs was back in 2014. They have been playing under 500 for the last 4 consecutive seasons in a row. The Angels made a big splash in the offseason by signing superstar third baseman Anthony Rendon to a 7-year deal. That addition combined with Shohei Ohtani being totally healthy means that Mike Trout is finally going to get to play with talent around him. The Angels should have a top 5 offense this season. Their weakness is their pitching staff and is likely going to be a bit sketchy. Shohei Ohtani will most likely be on an innings limit and it's hard to have a ton of faith in any other starting pitchers. That would mean that the Angels are going to play a ton of high-scoring games this season. So my prediction is that the Los Angeles Angels will be a lot better team this season and will be a wildcard contender this year. Their lineup will undoubtedly be one of the best in MLB this year. But that might not matter at all if their pitching staff makes every opposing team look like the 27 Yankees.
The Texas Rangers, 80-82.
The Texas Rangers have had 3 consecutive seasons under 500. They also haven't been to the postseason since 2016. The Rangers improved their starting rotation. They still have Mike Minor and Lance Lynn, who both earned Cy Young votes in 2019. Take those two and add 3 quality starting pitchers in Kyle Gibson, Jordan Lyles, and 2-time Cy Young Award winner Corey Kluber. If they pitch to potential, they could have one of the better starting staffs in all of baseball, including a top 3 that could even carry the Rangers into a postseason berth. The Rangers' fail this offseason was adding an impact bat in the lineup, preferably from the right side. They missed out on their top target, Anthony Rendon. They weren't that comfortable giving out a 4-year offer to Josh Donaldson. They missed out on signing free agent Nicholas Castellanos. They weren't able to trade for Starling Marte. Those are all players that could have had a very nice domino effect in the Rangers lineup and given a star like Joey Gallo some protection in the lineup. I think if the Texas Rangers rotation can live up to the expectations and key players step up their production, young players make the impact, and Joey Gallo can string together an entire season, they could have a chance of a wildcard spot, and that's if everything goes to plan.
The Seattle Mariners, 67-95.
No team in major U.S. pro sports has gone longer than the Seattle Mariners without making the playoffs for 18 years. Last year, the Mariners started out this 2019 season with a bang, going 13-2 while scoring 117 runs in their first 15 games of the season. They finished the 2019 season with just 68 wins. In the team's 43-year history, they've only made the playoffs just 4 times in their history with no World Series appearances. The demise of the team from 2018 to 2019 came from a massive step back in their pitching. The Seattle Mariners allowed 182 more runs than the previous season at 711 runs given up, leading to a 23rd place finish in team ERA at 4.99. Their pitching staff allowed 260 home runs, 4th most in the league, while picking up 34 saves on the 2019 campaign. Their offense did score 81 more runs than they did in 2018 at 677. Which moved them to 20th in the majors. They finished 12th in home runs at 239 and 18th in RBIs at 730. They are now in their 2nd year of their rebuilding mode and they need to rebuild their starting rotation. And their bullpen is in transition, lacking a truly dominant closer. Seattle does have one of the top farm systems in the league, with 2 of them being in the top 25 prospects and both being in the outfield. Neither are likely to play in Seattle this season, but no team has a better pair of minor league hitters. I positively think that the Seattle Mariners aren't going to be that good at all this season and will be in for a long season. For at least another year, the playoffs remain out of reach for the Seattle Mariners, while the rebuilding has begun.
That's my AL West standings prediction for the 2020 season. Here you go. The Atlanta Braves, 91-71.
The Atlanta Braves have won their second straight National League East Division crown last season. They improved their record by 7 more wins than over the 2018 mark, but lost in the division series in the playoffs for the second straight season. They moved up to the second seed in the National League and did manage to force a fifth and deciding game before losing to the St. Louis Cardinals in a 13-1 blowout in Game 5. Since 1991, Atlanta has made the postseason 16 times with 1 World Series title and 5 World Series appearances. The reason why they were better in the 2019 season was because it grew on the offensive side of the ball. Atlanta finished 7th in runs at 855, which was an improvement of 96 runs from 2018 at 759. The Atlanta Braves hit 249 home runs and were ranked 8th in the league, and they also were ranked 6th with 824 RBIs in the MLB. Their pitching staff was ranked 10th in team ERA at 4.19 in 2019. Atlanta finished the season with 44 saves. In the offseason, the Braves signed outfielder Marcell Ozuna and catcher Travis d'Arnaud to help replace the loss of third baseman Josh Donaldson. They also added a pair of arms to their pitching staff, starting pitcher Cole Hamels and relief pitcher Will Smith. Atlanta took a swing on a minor league deal with starting pitcher Felix Hernandez. So I predict that the Atlanta Braves will be a great team again this season and will be in the hunt for a third straight NL East title and will be contender for the World Series this year.
The Washington Nationals, 90-72.
The Washington Nationals won their first ever World Series title last year after going 93-69 and earning the right to host the Brewers in the wild card game. They won that contest 4-3 with an 8-inning rally and then knocked off the Dodgers, the Cardinals, and the Astros on their way to hoisting the trophy. So let's remember that the Washington Nationals were 19-31 in late May. And after the All-Star break, they were never within 4 games of the Braves in the NL East. They trailed late in the wildcard game. Then they were down 2-1 in division series. And then 3-2 to the Astros before stringing together comebacks that the DC residents will be talking about for decades. The Nationals enter the 2020 season without one of baseball's best players, third baseman Anthony Rendon, who signed with the Angels as a free agent for 7 years, $245 million. The Washington Nationals have one of the very best starting rotations in MLB, and their offense had a franchise record by scoring 873 runs in 2019, which they were ranked 6th in MLB. Their offense should be pretty good again this year. I absolutely think that the Washington Nationals will be contender for the National League East Division crown this season. They might not win back-to-back World Series titles after losing Anthony Rendon to the Angels, but the Nationals did enough to upgrade their roster to make a return trip to the playoffs this year.
The New York Mets, 88-74.
The New York Mets finished 10 games over 500 in 2019, but missed the playoffs for a third straight season. To add an insult to their loss, their division rivals, the Washington Nationals, who finished just ahead of them, not only made the playoffs, but went on a magical run to a World Series championship. Their 86-76 record was a 9-game improvement on the previous season and showed the team is trending on the right path. The New York Mets have had 2 managers since they last played a game. Carlos Beltran, the team's choice to replace Mickey Callaway, became unviable after the disclosure of his role in the Houston Astros sign-stealing scheme. Then they turned to Luis Rojas, age 38, the son of legendary outfielder and manager Felipe Alou, who has been coaching and managing in the system since 2007. While Luis lacks name recognition, he's more prepared to run a team than a newcomer like Beltran. So it's possible that this whole dark story may have a happy ending. I think the New York Mets will be a solid team in 2020. I wouldn't be surprised if they sneak into the playoffs this year as a wildcard team.
The Philadelphia Phillies, 84-78.
The Philadelphia Phillies dramatically underachieved last season after spending heavily in the offseason. Bryce Harper came over from the Washington Nationals on a monster deal. Andrew McCutchen was signed as well, and JT Realmuto and Gene Shigure were brought over via trade. Unfortunately for Phillies fans, despite the spending and adding, the team finished exactly .500 and missed the postseason for the 8th straight season. That underachieving finish cost the Philadelphia Phillies manager his job, as Gabe Kapler was replaced after 2 seasons by well-respected Joe Girardi. Their new head coach, Joe Girardi, has won a World Series with the New York Yankees in 2009 against the Philadelphia Phillies. He has made the playoffs 6 out of 10 seasons with the New York Yankees. He also has a career record of 988 wins and 794 losses, with a winning percentage of .554. The offseason additions. The Phillies brought in one arm in Zach Wheeler and one bat in Didi Gregorius. There have been rumblings that they're willing to do more and could be more active in season, as the Phillies were last year, as they tried to go all in during the early years of Bryce Harper's contract. I absolutely think that the Philadelphia Phillies made the right managing hire with Joe Girardi, and Bryce Harper will be better in his second year. They will be a wildcard contender this season, but the lack of starting pitching could keep them out of the playoffs.
The Miami Marlins, 64-98.
The Miami Marlins will be in the 3rd season since the ownership group led by Bruce Sherman and Derek Jeter took over the Miami Marlins franchise, and their long-term plan is starting to take shape. At first, they sold off many of Miami's key pieces by trading them away. However, those trades and solid drafting have helped the Miami Marlins start to get things headed to the right path. They finally look like a team that's starting to improve at the major league level, along with strengthening its organizational depth. There's just one big problem for the Miami Marlins this season. They play in a stacked NL East, where the other 4 teams have legitimate playoff hopes. The Miami Marlins had a terrible season last year with a record of 57 wins and 105 losses, and they finished 40 games behind the Braves in the NL East. They had the worst record in the National League by a whopping 12 games. They also finished last in the NL in runs and last in the majors in home runs. They even finished last in attendance, drawing 811,302. While they did improve their lineup, the rotation is still shaky, and the young arms are still developing. I honestly think the Miami Marlins franchise seems to be heading to the right direction, but has way too far to go to jump to winning season this year. I do expect improvement from the young roster, but the Miami Marlins will likely finish last in the NL East again this season for the 3rd time in a row.
That's my NL East standing predictions for the 2020 season. Here you go. The St. Louis Cardinals, 89-73.
Few teams did less this offseason than the St. Louis Cardinals. They lost their biggest free agent in Marcell Ozuna, who would go on to sign with a deal with the Atlanta Braves. They traded away Jose Martinez, which got them 2 prospects that we could see down the road, and they added just 2 players in the offseason. It was an oddly passive winter for a front office that in recent years had brought in Marcell Ozuna, first baseman Paul Goldschmidt, outfielder Dexter Fowler, starter Miles McCullough, and lefty reliever Andrew Miller. They made the playoffs last year for the first time in 3 seasons and lost in the National League Championship Series against the Washington Nationals. By all means, I think the St. Louis Cardinals will have a good season again this year, and will have a good chance of winning the NL Central again for the 2nd straight season in a row.
The Chicago Cubs, 86-76.
The Chicago Cubs entered the 2019 season as a World Series contender. When the 2019 season entered the playoffs, the Chicago Cubs were not a part of that, ending a 4-year playoff streak of making the playoffs. The Cubs let go of the only manager alive to lead the team to a World Series title, but retaining the key players from those 2016 champs. David Ross, a part-time catcher on that club, takes over for Joe Madden after 3 years at ESPN, becoming the latest MLB manager to assume the role with no experience. The Chicago Cubs are counting on David Ross's relationships with his former teammates, as well as the knowledge he acquired during a 15-year career, to revitalize a club that had the 3rd highest payroll last season, which resulted in just 84 wins last year. The first issue David Ross should address is the Cubs' defense, which ranked 11th in NL efficiency last season. If David Ross can turn around his team's defense, perhaps the Chicago Cubs could contend for a playoff spot. Even after an embarrassing collapse at the end of the 2019 season, I absolutely think that the Chicago Cubs will have a great chance of going back to the playoffs this year.
The Cincinnati Reds, 85-77.
The Cincinnati Reds haven't made the playoffs since 2013, and since then they have been rebuilding since the 2015 season. Now for the second straight offseason, the Reds have made aggressive moves to improve. They signed a pair of power hitters to a 4-year, $64 million contract, Mike Moustakas, who will take over at second base, and outfielder Nick Castellanos, while requiring a veteran lefty Wade Miley to bolster the rotation and Pedro Strop to reinforce the bullpen. They even went outside the country, signing Japanese outfielder Shogo Yakiyama to a 3-year deal worth $21 million. The question, though, is whether all that talent fits together. Shogo has primarily played center field in Japan, but he turns 32 in April, and reports from Japan are that his defense has slipped. Mike Moustakas, a veteran third baseman, manned second base last season in Milwaukee for the first time in his 9-year career. Their top prospect, who debuted last season, started only in the outfield, but has experience at second and third base. The Cincinnati Reds have improved what was a terrible offense at the 5th fewest runs scored in MLB last season, but in doing so create a potential terrible defense this season. They have a top 10 rotation, which features Trevor Bauer, Sonny Gray, Luis Castillo, and Wade Miley. They have a very strong 1-4 rotation. Their offense is going to be very strong as well. I absolutely think that the Cincinnati Reds will definitely be a better team, which is more than you can say for any other team in the division. All that could pay off with their first playoff berth since 2013.
The Milwaukee Brewers, 83-79.
The Milwaukee Brewers have made the playoffs in back-to-back seasons for the first time since 1981 to 1982. They have been one of the game's feel-good stories over the past 2 seasons. Their owner was against the tanking trend and invested to win now. And in doing so, they added MVP and right fielder Christian Yelich, a defensive anchor in center field Lorenzo Cain, and 2 playoff trips, coming within 1 win of advancing to the 2018 World Series. Since the Milwaukee Brewers season ended with a wildcard loss against the Washington Nationals last October, their general manager has turned over nearly half the roster without making any large expenses or major trades. The key additions are outfielder Avisail Garcia, catcher Omar Narvaez, and former Dodgers right-hander Josh Lindblom, who signed after 2 strong seasons in the Korean baseball organization with a 2.85 ERA. I think the Brewers have the lineup to put up runs, but I don't think the pitching will be able to take them to the next level. So my prediction is that I think the Milwaukee Brewers are destined to be a competitive team this season, and could be a wildcard team if everything goes right. But they won't be nearly as good as they were in 2019.
The Pittsburgh Pirates, 68-94.
The Pittsburgh Pirates have cut ties to their mid-decade success this winter, firing manager Clint Hurdle and GM Neil Huntington, and trading the last star that remained from that era, center fielder Starling Marte, to the Arizona Diamondbacks. Their old general manager Neil Huntington has built 3 straight NL wildcard teams, but he never made the big move, the kind of recent champs like the Cubs and the Red Sox did to get over the hump. He also traded Garrett Cole for a limited package and paid the Rays dearly to watch righty Chris Archer fall apart. Now, Cole is the richest player ever with the New York Yankees. And the Tampa Bay Rays now have a pair of cornerstones that they got from the Pittsburgh Pirates for Chris Archer. Now they will begin a long rebuild this season under new leadership of General Manager Ben Sherrington and manager Derek Shelton. This is just the first year of rebuilding, and things are going to get much worse in Pittsburgh before they get any better. By all means, I think the Pittsburgh Pirates won't be that good this season, but they will be the best last place team in the game this year.
That's my NL Central standings predictions for the 2020 season. Here you go.
The Los Angeles Dodgers, 103-59. The Los Angeles Dodgers won a franchise record in 106 games in 2019, but lost to the eventual World Series champions, the Washington Nationals. The Dodgers are bitter about their World Series losses, and for obvious reasons. Given the news of the Astros sign-stealing scandal that came out this offseason. Now Los Angeles is all in. in 2020, adding Milwaukee Betts to an already ridiculous dangerous lineup. David Price also slides into a stacked rotation when adding superstar Milwaukee Betts, 27 years old, formerly of the Boston Red Sox, to MLB's deepest roster gives the Los Angeles Dodgers a third MVP to go with 24-year-old Cody Bellinger and left-hander Clayton Kershaw. A.J. Pollock, who signed a 4-year deal worth $55 million before the 2019 season, is the fourth outfielder behind Milwaukee Betts, Cody Bellinger, and Jock Peterson, now a potential trade chip. Even with all that talent in the majors, the Dodgers still have 7 of baseball's America's top 100 prospects, second only to the Tampa Bay Rays. They have won 7 straight NL West Division crowns and going to the World Series twice. The Dodgers still haven't won a World Series title since 1988. So my prediction is that the Los Angeles Dodgers will win the NL West again for the 8th straight season in a row and will be the best team in MLB this year. They will have a fabulous chance of winning the World Series this season.
The San Diego Padres, 83-79. The San Diego Padres enter the 2019 season with some hype following the Manny Machado signing. But they still just won 7 games and finished at the bottom of the NL West. The San Diego Padres haven't had a winning season since 2010, and their last time they made a playoff appearance was back in 2006.
In the offseason, the Padres didn't make a monster free agent signing along the lines of first baseman Eric Hosmer in 2018 or third baseman Manny Machado in 2019. But they still had a strong offseason. To boost the team's .308 on base percentage, that was ranked 13th in the NL, they traded for Rays outfielder Tommy Pham, who has a career on base percentage of .373 career. And they also trade for Brewers outfielder Trent Grisham, who has a career on base percentage of .376 in 5 minor league seasons. They filled up the starting rotation with right-hander Zach Davis and added lefty Drew Pomeranz to the bullpen. These reinforcements probably won't keep the Dodgers up at night, but what will is the army of young prospects starting to march into San Diego. Last year, their shortstop Fernando Tatis Jr. played at a superstar level, hitting .316 with 22 home runs and 16 steals in just 84 games, while righty Chris Paddack struck out 26.9% of batters at 26 starts, with a 3.33 ERA. They will have even more young talent in the 2020 season. Their pitching was pretty solid last year, and it should continue to be the strength of the team in 2020. But the San Diego Padres season will likely come down to making offensive improvements. The San Diego Padres finished just 27th in the league in offense last season. So my prediction is that the San Diego Padres will have a winning season this year. They do have some of the most exciting young talent in baseball, with more on the way, but they won't catch the Dodgers this season. They are most likely a year away.
The Arizona Diamondbacks, 81-81.
The Arizona Diamondbacks have improved from 82 wins in 2018 to 85 wins in 2019, but were disappointing absences from both postseasons, including a monster September collapse in 2018. Even without Goldschmidt and Greinke, the Arizona Diamondbacks made a late wildcard run under third-year manager Torey Lovullo. In the offseason, their general manager Mike Hazen bolstered the outfield by trading for Starling Marte and signing Cole Calhoun. Starling Marte will play center field, though that's a stretch for a 31-year-old. And that would allow Miguel Marte to return to second base. The team's big move in the offseason was signing left-hander Madison Bumgarner to a 5-year deal worth $85 million. At the age of 30, Bumgarner is on the bad side of his career after 11 seasons with the Giants. But he fills out a rotation with no glaring weak spot, with Weaver, righty Zach Gallen, and lefty Robbie Ray potentially combined for 600 strikeouts. All those arms won't be enough to topple the Dodgers in the NL West, but they will keep Arizona in the thick of a crowded wildcard race. By all means, I think the Arizona Diamondbacks will be a good team again this season, and I believe they will be a competitive team for a wildcard spot this year.
The Colorado Rockies, 78-84.
After making franchise history by making 2 playoff appearances in a row, the Colorado Rockies dropped to 71-91 last year. It could face a 2020 season that could see them becoming sellers before the trade deadline. The Rockies were still a top 10 offense in terms of runs per game, but almost all of that was thanks to Coors Field. When the Rockies play at home, they average an MLB high 6.17 runs per game, but they fade on the road, scoring just 4.14 runs per game. Part of the issue for the Rockies was pitching, both home and away. They had the second worst ERA in baseball last season. Their franchise player Nolan Arenado felt disrespected by the Rockies because they did nothing in the offseason to get better after a disappointing 2019 season. You can understand Nolan Arenado's frustration. At the age of 28, he has one playoff win, and that was a wildcard victory in 2018 under his belt. They were ranked among the league's worst at catcher and second base last year. If their general manager doesn't trade Nolan Arenado, the five-time All-Star will almost surely exercise his opt-out after 2021 in search of October glory. If their general manager does try to move him, the opt-out and no-trade clause limits his options. I honestly think that the Colorado Rockies won't have much of a shot this season to make the playoffs. This also could be a beginning of the end of having Nolan Arenado on their team, and he could be traded sometime this season.
The San Francisco Giants, 69-93.
It might finally be time to pay for all those recent World Series titles, as the San Francisco Giants appear to be in trouble this season. The Giants have missed the playoffs for 3 straight seasons in a row. With the departure of Madison Bumgarner, who signed with the Arizona Diamondbacks this offseason. In his 11 years with the franchise, he's delivered San Francisco fans 3 World Series titles, 4 All-Star seasons, and 1 heroic 5-inning relief appearance. Madison Bumgarner's exit also further weakens a rotation that ranked 18th in fielding independent pitching and 23rd in strikeout rate. The rotation will be patched together by a couple of questionable acquisitions, but their offense is the real problem here. Following a year where the Giants rate 28th in runs, the lineup has essentially done nothing to improve. Things might get even worse for a team that won 77 games last season before they get any better. The Giants have had a top 10 payroll every year since 2011, spending close to $600 million in the last 3 years to finish below 503 times. In the offseason in November of 2019, the San Francisco Giants hired Gabe Kapler as the 37th manager in team history, succeeding their retiring Bruce Bochy. By all means, I think the San Francisco Giants are not going to be that good this season, but the team still isn't bad enough to flirt with a 100-loss season this year.
That's my NL West standings predictions for the 2020 season. Here you go.
What are your guys' predictions for the 2020 MLB season? Join me in the comment section below and tell me what you guys think, and please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to just keep loving sports, and I'll see you next time.